welcome to Create, Engage, Succeed with your co-host, Mary and
Amadeus.
And our special guest coming to us from the far north in Canada.
Sorry, I'm just getting onto my igloo and I got my dog slid out back. I gotta park it first.
David Gilbert, who is a professional voice artist. And I've got my Facebook open up as well in case there's comments while we're live. If not, I will certainly pass comments on to you.
Sure.
But today we're talking about two subjects, amongst other things. So before we get into the nitty gritty, which is why would you want to use a professional voice artist over a computer generated voice, and how to create good audio for your courses and podcasts? Amadeus had a little question about why David was coming at us live from his blanket fort.
Why am I coming from here?
Yeah, why are you in a blanket fort?
It's technically not a blanket fort because I got all kinds of structural stuff. But this is a moving blanket, just, because I didn't want to, it would be kind of weird to have a conversation with somebody, especially about this topic, and sit at my desk. It's like, dude, if you're going to talk about sound quality and doing all this stuff, do it from your booth, right? So anyways, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. No, and I think it's a great idea. And I think as the audience is listening, they're also going to notice a difference in the sound quality between Amadeus and I using our just kind of like headphones and the sound quality that you have, because you sound crisp and clean, and we've got these little background noises. And
because I just have a big microphone in front of me.
Yeah, he also just have a giant microphone in front of him. And we're not going to discuss microphones today, but why does that make a difference, the sound quality?
Well, think about sound in general. If you watch Jurassic Park, right? Everybody's seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine you're watching that movie with either A, the sound off, or the sound coming through a 2-inch your phone speaker at the other end of the room. How much different of an impact would that be versus seeing it on a full surround sound system with a bass woofer, like the whole deal, the four speakers, 6 speakers all around? Sound is so impactful in the way we interpret, we enjoy content. So if you're listening to a podcast, if you're watching something and all you hear is this like high-pitched ring or an echo or some other deviation from the music or from the audio, it's distracting. And if it's distracting, you're not going to be fully engaged and you're not going to absorb the content.
Makes sense.
So, yeah. And even, yours sounds pretty good, Amadeus, but Mary, I can hear an echo in yours.
Right.
You sound clear, but I hear an echo. So for a short conversation, it's not a big deal. If I'm listening to you for like an hour, it would start to this is sort of annoying.
Right. And I understand that. And then I add an extra layer of annoyance when I'm listening to things, because I'm one of those lucky folks that has misophonia. So certain sounds really send me on edge, as Amadeus can well attest to, like opening a bag of potato chips. I'm going to come around the corner and just rip that bag out of your hand and throw it away because I can't handle that sound. And so even on things like podcasts and stuff, if there's not a good sound quality, I'll just skip it because it really hurts my ears.
Yeah.
So what are some tips that you would share with somebody who, let's say that they wanted to get into podcasting, and you've already noticed that Amadeus' sound quality is better than mine.
Yep.
What are some things that you would suggest that they look at to get started?
The last thing you want to spend your money on is a microphone, believe it or not.
Okay.
Believe it or not. The first thing you want to do is find the quietest space in your house. That could be a walk-in closet. It could be some other place that you hadn't thought of. You want some place that doesn't have a lot of hard surfaces. You want to have lots of soft surfaces. That's why I've got blankets everywhere. And it's isolated from outside noise. You cannot, unless, even if you have a whisper room, which is like a $5,000 pre-made booth. I was just on a Zoom with somebody, a member of our organization last week, and she says, I got to stop. There's a guy mowing the lawn right near me, right next door, and he's probably got a very loud mower. So even with a very expensive booth, you're still going to have sound getting in. So you have to do as much as you can to find the quietest place. Then you treat the space, because if you ever hear somebody say, well, I have a soundproof area. No, it's like the same thing as waterproof. Eventually something will leak. Goes down far enough, it'll leak. So you want to find a quiet enough space, put as much blankets or soft materials as you can, things that will deflect and diffract the sound, bookshelves. If you're in a nice study with lots of books, that's great too. And then you buy the best microphone you can afford, and learn how to talk into it. You don't talk directly into it. You talk to the side. You don't have those those plosives.
Yes, I wondered about that.
Yeah, duh, anything that lets air out, and you can tell how much it is just by speaking into your finger. Like if you say Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, and you can feel the air on your finger. If you're speaking directly at the microphone, then you're going to hear these boom, 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 these low ends of the mic, of the air. Like those are just little things, but make a huge difference.
That is major. I mean, there's some basic things that even somebody thinking about starting a podcast or doing their own audio for an online course could really learn from. What about like eggshell material? I know when I worked in a corporate environment, we would create like mini sound booths by putting up this eggshell material.
Yeah. So first off, the microphone you've got there, you've got it in a good spot too, because I see people who have those headset mics, they put the mic right in front of their mouth. You're going to get those all the time. Put it off to the side. So the egg crate stuff, it's really only good for high-end frequencies. It doesn't really absorb low-end. Low-end is like is something that would be best absorbed by like insulation, like the pink insulation or Roxol, making panels out of that. There's a lot of DIY stuff online. That's going to help somewhat, but not a lot. And you'd have to do, and if the space itself is bad, that's just going to take away some of the refraction, but not a lot.
Okay. Well, that would explain, because again, in some of those cubicle environments where it's like, hey, let's make a sound booth, but you still have all that noise going on in the cubicles around. It's like, that wasn't that great. So let's say that somebody watching this podcast wanted to work with you to edit their audio for a podcast. What would you tell them to do to make sure that they had the cleanest audio file that they could give you for editing?
It goes back to the room again. Like the more you can get rid of any kind of external sounds, echoes, hums. Like if you record somewhere, like right now, I'm recording beside my furnace room, so I cannot have the chest freezer on with the compressor. I can't have the hot water tank on. I can't have any of those things, or a fridge above me, a wine fridge. So I have a switch that turns everything off.
Oh, wow.
Right. So when I go to record, there's no compressor sound. So just think about record some dead noise, talk into it for 30 seconds. Easiest thing to do is send me 30 seconds to a minute of dead sound, and then speak for a minute and send that to me. I can tell you if you got good sound or not. But you can only do so much. So don't freak out about it. Figure out the best thing you can do and then go from there.
Okay. Well, because I know a lot of people, again, are like, oh, let's do a podcast. It sounds like a great idea. But until you know if that podcast is going to be a success, if it's something you enjoy doing, I generally discourage people from going out and buying the most expensive stuff that they can buy. Because 6 months later, you might go, oh, that was a really, like, it's one thing to have like yarn all over my office because I like to crochet. It's another thing to have like a $4,000 microphone and a sound booth.
Which you don't need anyways.
Okay. Well, and that's a good point, because a lot of times people we talk to think the more expensive is the better.
Yeah, there are ways you can get around things. So, for instance, there's two basic types of microphones. There's a condenser and a dynamic. Condenser is like the one I have, which you have to plug in. Yeah, it has to be powered, and there's a whole other. You have to have an interface. But a dynamic mic is something that you had as a kid, and just plug it into your cassette player and start recording in. Those may be better for noisy environments because it only picks up what you talk into.
Oh.
Right, so it won't pick up a lot of ambient sound because it'll only pick up what it hears. Some of them are not as good quality, but others may work as well. So and if you're going to spend the money, I mean, there's a $1,500 what's called the 416. It's a shotgun microphone. It has a very small pickup window.
Okay.
So it's great for it. You see it in movies. They use it to pointed at the actors because it doesn't pick up all the ambient noise. It only picks up right there. except it's $1,500.
Right, which if you're first starting out, is maybe more than you want to spend.
No.
So what about, and again, going back to my corporate days, there's always, like a discussion of, is the snowball bike or the Yeti mic better?
Honestly, you ask 100 people, you'll get 100 different answers.
Right.
So start with the environment. Even your car is a great environment. Most cars are actually very quiet. Now, I'm not suggesting you're going to want to record an hour podcast, every week in your car, especially in the middle of winter with the car off. But, it's a good environment. So do whatever you can to get a good environment first. Then that's probably 80% of your sound issues. And then actual how to use the mic, so you're not actually talking directly into it and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, if you do those simple things, you can eliminate a lot of pain.
Oh, very cool.
It's good to know.
Yeah. And not over speaking, because the microphone is an ear. You wouldn't talk to somebody like that. But not talking so loud. I had one file I was editing for a podcast recently, and the guest would be like very, very low, and then you get loud and loud, and they get low and low, and you get loud.
Wow.
And it's like your levels are like this, right? So imagine your listener. You're listening at a normal level, and then it goes down. You turn the volume up, and all of a sudden they blast back. So, and that's good for you and the guest to know. Okay, let's try and speak at a constant kind of conversational volume, right? So that you don't have to have those extremes in the volume. So
that makes sense. I mean, unless you're doing like a murder mystery or a ghost story or something where you want people to lean in and hear what you're saying, I think, a consistent voice is pretty good. Amadeus, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. All right. So continuing the trend of some fun questions. For people at home, maybe you're looking to get into courses. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between some of the AI, like the artificial voices, versus having an actual voice actor, or trying to, do it yourself?
Well, I think that boils down to how much you value the human beings in your process.
Oh.
Ultimately. I mean, do you want to have another human being that you work with that will do this project, or you don't? Now, I'm not going to be facetious and say, well, there should be no AI. I mean, that's just wrong. There are times when there's not enough budget, or when your turnaround is literally within an hour. Although most good talent can turn around most projects very quickly. So that's, I think, less of an issue. But which also raises the question, if it's that important, why are you trusting it to an AI voice? Right? It's level of importance.
That's a really valid.
If it's a critical, mission critical, company wide, sexual harassment program that has to go out and you have to get maximum retention, you're going to leave that to an AI voice? I don't know. But if it's something that's very fact-based and very much an on-demand and it's low value, then the AI voice may make sense, because there's less, the outcome is less important.
Okay. So I mean, like, we've used some AI voices, for example, when it was a optional voiceover. Somebody might need to hear it, but really what we wanted you to focus on was doing the interaction. Like, you're going to enter data into a form to practice, but some people felt like, if I heard a voice, I might grasp the content a little bit better.
Sure. And I can also see it for accessibility. You may have a whole page of text on a screen, but because of accessibility issues, you need a narrator. And you think, well, do we really need to have that whole page narrated? Let's do the AI voice for hearing impaired people, and you get best of both worlds. Now, if you had the budget for hiring a voice actor, I think that would be better, because then you're still getting the more retention, right?
Right. Well, and I think the other piece of it, from working with you and some other voice artists, is also the AI voice. And we've had this complaint from clients of, they just didn't pronounce that word correctly, versus working with the human who says, could you please give me a glossary of how to say these words? Or in some cases, I've had a VO artist, send me like 4 different takes of the word, going, I really wasn't sure how to pronounce it. So here's 4 different versions. Let me know which one is correct.
Yep. A perfect example of that, and I hate to even use this as an example, though it's sort of exploded recently. a friend and colleague who submitted her voice for a text-to-speech company, ended up, and there's a lawsuit pending and whatnot, litigation pending, is now being used as a voice on TikTok, right? So now that is the female voice on TikTok. So the interesting thing is, I did a post to support her, and I typed out the words, and it didn't even get the way I wanted some words said. Like the intonation was off on a sentence. Like even if you put a period, and even if you put the letters A, I, like it was fascinating to me that this is supposed to be like the latest and greatest, and it sort of sounded like her, but the intonation was completely off. So yeah, I mean, you can't tell an AI, no, I didn't want it that way. Can you speed it up a little bit here? Can you give a little bit of pause? Good luck.
Right.
And I was going to say, and that's especially an issue too, when you have either foreign words or an AI with an accent, and then it gets even more ridiculous trying to deal with.
Yeah. So again, when in doubt, hire a human.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think right now that makes the most sense. Because the AI, it's a lot better than it was, even a few years ago. But there are still those nuances. And there are some voices that we found that when we're doing the AI work, it's like, well, this voice, it doesn't matter what you do, it always says this word incorrectly or puts the accent on the wrong syllable, versus this voice that is like, oh, the accent goes on this syllable.
Sure.
Like, how could you get that so different when it's the exact same text?
Yeah. I mean, I understand it's a good tool to build your program and get it all polished up and run past legal and do all that kind of stuff. And then once it's all done, all right, here's the script, send it to the talent. We've got 24, 48 hours, get it, give me the files back, and yeah, good to go.
Right. And I think that's a great point too, is if you use the AI voice as your kind of pre-work, so that everyone can hear it, they can visualize it, they know, and you just warn them in advance that this is not the same as a human voice. Sure. So we've got a question from somebody in the audience who's going back to doing your own voices for, let's say, your own personal online courses. And the question is, first of all, it's actually two questions. Question number one is there a good length of time that audio should be? Like, is it 10 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? When do I take a breath? So it's kind of like...
I'm not sure I get the question, whether or not it's...
So the question, I guess, is, how long should they talk before they take a breather and give their audience something else to do? And should there be different voices? So it's not just like one person. Like, I could listen to your voice for hours.
Thanks. I think it's the content, really. I don't think people like to be talked to, like lectured. I mean, your content will determine how long you have somebody talking to you. If you can do dialogue, great, because then it's scenario based and it really, okay, I get what they're saying. Because I mean, go back to when you're learning, when you're in school. I mean, who wants to sit in front of a teacher for an hour and have them lecture you and put you to sleep, right? It's the same thing. We're adults. We want to have something engaging. So if I bring up a topic, okay, well, let's explore an example. Here's Mary and Joe, and have them do a little dialogue, and then you have the follow-ups. Was Joe right in doing this, and was Mary right? Like, I think that is a great way, showing, don't telling. As far as narrating yourself, how long should you go? Well, if you've never narrated before, I don't think you want to be spending 3 hours a day talking. You'll probably wear your throat out, because if you haven't had any training in terms of even like just talking. But as long as you're hydrated, you don't stress your voice, you're not doing anything that feels weird, and you listen to your body, you should be fine.
Okay. So then the other question they have is teleprompter and script, or just wing it?
If you have a script, go by the script.
Okay.
But the key to having a script is, and actually the benefit of doing your own narration is, you are the SME. You know exactly what you wrote. You know exactly what you're talking about. So above everything else, before you hit record, read the whole thing out loud and listen to it, to yourself saying it. Because a lot of times you'll catch, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like somebody would say it. And imagine somebody at the other end, someplace, is going to be listening to that and going, well, does that sound like I'm talking to you or just talking out into the world? So doing a little bit of prep first, and then when you start recording, you don't want to sound like, hi, this is an audio message, play continuously on a loop. Like, you want to sound like a real person, right? And you don't want to be like very formal, but it depends who you're talking to. I'm actually doing a presentation at the Canadian e-learning conference next month, and part of that section is going to be on the narrating.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's interesting that people will think, oh, it's just reading.
Right.
And I took an audiobook class the first year I started in 2016. I took an audiobook class. Not that I was going to do audiobooks, but I thought it sounded interesting. And the gentleman who did it had done about 800 books by that point, probably done over 1,000 now.
Wow.
And he says, I get tons of people every week saying, hey, how do I get into audiobooks? And he says, look, stop. If you're interested, go find a quiet space in your house, a desk and a lamp, get a favorite nonfiction book or fiction, whatever it is, and plan to read 2 hours out loud for 2 weeks every day. If after that time you haven't pulled your hair out, come back and we'll talk.
Interesting.
Right? So that's just a general thing. If you want to do audiobooks or if you want to do something, do it for a while and then see if you really like it. Right? So
yeah, well, and I've noticed even like one of my back in the day favorite comedian / personality podcaster did a book. And I listened to him narrate his own book that he wrote. And I was so used to who he was on screen and on the podcast. When I looked to the book, I listened to the book, I'm like, this can't be the same person. He sounds like he's got a stick up, where? And it's just like, I'm like, how? And you do this for a living. And at that point, I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to narrate audiobooks, because if somebody who does this for a living sounds this bad.
Well, see, I think what he got the impression of, and that's what I think most people who start off in this field is, well, I think I have to sound a certain way. And I read everything like this. David Gilbert, create engagement. I read everything like that because I thought that's how you're supposed to sound. And no, no, people don't want to be sold to, right? Please advise us of any unusual pronunciations and write them. They don't want to hear, please advise us of any unusual pronunciation. Like that, but you get that once you have a mic in front of you and you're like, okay, there's a microphone. I gotta do something. And it's like, no, you just need to talk. You need to talk like Mary and Amadeus. You got to talk like you, explaining to somebody about this phone, right? You have to explain, well, this phone has this many buttons, and to do this, you have to press here. And then after that, you press here and you do that. I'm explaining to you.
That's brilliant. Right? I think that's kind of what we're running into with one of our clients right now. It's like, I have to be a certain way instead of just being myself.
Yeah. And there's more to it, of course. I mean, you have to figure out, who are you talking to? And then actually, who are you? Because you're not Mary. You're somebody else within the company. Are you the person's superior, direct report? Are you the CEO? Like, what relationship do you have to the person who's listening to it? And a bunch of it. I mean, believe it or not, there's like courses on every single genre.
Wow.
To figure out how to speak properly for each genre. Even those 5 or 6 second promos you see on TV, coming up next on CBS,
right? That
alone is a very precise genre that requires hours and hours and hours of training.
Wow.
But when you hear this stuff, you go, well, it just sounds so effortless. And it's no different than, watching Venus Williams play tennis, right? She makes it look so effortless, like the backhanded, down the court. That's 20 years of practice.
At least.
So whatever it is, yeah.
Right. No, but that's a really valid point. And I think, again, thinking about course creators and podcasters, giving yourself a little bit of grace, knowing that you have to learn it, and then finding somebody like you that can help make you sound better, whether it's in the editing process, whether it's in the pre-setup where they could book a call with you and go, okay, charge me money, tell me how to be better, tell me how much it's going to cost me for you to fix my podcast. But I don't think a lot of people understand how much before, during, and after goes in. It's not just get in front of the microphone and talk.
Yeah. I see it all the time where I see people who are on LinkedIn and they've got, they're posting these amazing looking videos. or they're podcasters. I know a good friend of mine, Jody Krangle, has one that's very popular. But what people don't realize is that the first 10 or whatever they did, that sucked. Unless they came into it with like a lot of skill set in something, right? But most times they suck because it's the first time you've done it. Like who got on their bike when they were 6 years old and just rode without training wheels? Nobody. You keep falling and get up, you fall, you get up, and eventually the training wheels come off and you're biking and you're, So I think that the thought for anybody who's starting a podcast or any kind of creative venture, give yourself some grace. Understand you're going to suck for the first 10, 20, 30 times, whatever it is. But by the 100th, wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty good quality.
Yeah,
and always be open to training. I would definitely not get into something like podcasting without having taken some kind of classes or watch some webinars, go to conferences on podcasting, learn the craft, and just fine tune it.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, we are already at 30 minutes, so really appreciate this. Before we go, 2 things. How can people get in touch with you if they want to work with you? And anything else you'd like to share with our potential podcasters, course creators, and corporate audiences?
You can find me anytime on my website, davidgilbertvoiceover.com.
Okay.
Or email david@davidgilbertvoiceover.com. Really creative email address.
I like it.
And there's a link on the site to book a call if you want to chat further about something. I'm the kind of person that I'm happy to help people with answer questions that it may not even be in my roundhouse, but just like to help people. So,
and I can attest to that because Amadeus, David's been helping us find some AR creators for our project with a client that I'm going to be meeting with tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic.
Because he also said something about AR voiceover, and I'm like, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, that's wow.
Yeah. Well, right. I've been looking into and following AR and VR for years, and I've always thought in the virtual world, if you're doing training and you're having people point at something, then why not have the full engagement and have a voice not all over the place, because that would be really distracting. But if they're clicking on something, then have the option for a narrated voice for that particular thing, whatever it may be.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So if you're pointing, especially you're pointing at and you're using it to train on a machinery, well, like take a copier, photocopier as a basic example, which should be the first VR thing that everybody builds is how to fix the copier, because it's always breaking, right? It's like, and the diagrams on the flip side of that panel are never that great. So if you had a phone and you pointed at this is the blah 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 rotunda, make sure you turn it clockwise, not counterclockwise, or you're going to screw like whatever it is. I mean, that make it more engaging and people will want to use it.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that's brilliant.
Fantastic idea. Yeah.
So he graciously reached out to his network and found us some potential people. So when we have that meeting tomorrow, I'm like, boom, I got a plan. And then I can come back to David and go, okay, here's the plan. So with that, I am going to say thank you, everyone, for watching. David, I will continue to follow up with you as I get more questions, because I know there's a lot of folks that catch this on the replay just because it's in the middle of some people's work days. How dare they?
Work? Work.
I know, we get the flexibility. So I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today. And we will be also sharing this on YouTube and LinkedIn. So if you've got I'll make sure that you're readily accessible so people can reach out to you. And this has been a blast. I've learned a lot. So thank you so much.
You don't want to extend it. I've got more time.
Well, I know Amadeus has to book to a meeting, but I'm happy to extend it if you want to just chat.
I'm good. I actually have some recordings I got to do, but it was great. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And I'm sure we'll have you back as a guest if you're open to that.
Sure. Anytime.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. Cool. All right. And I'm going to go read those links that you sent too.
Great.
All right. Have a good day. Thanks, everyone. This is Mary,
Amadeus
and David saying bye from
Amadeus,
the Create Engage Succeed Show.
Take care.
You too.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.